If communication has broken down for some reason, I don't know, you can try to figure it out later, but at the minimum, try a retransmission, because it's critical for that guy's survivability that he is following your directions on how to maneuver. Questions on retransmission if you do not see the pilot performing the action you directed him to do. Okay, as you'll notice, the prefix is always the full prefix to the person. Don't be lazy and call out hammer. Address an individual aircraft. Hammer 11, brake left. If you say hammer brake left, what you wind up getting is several airplanes in the air all braking left for no reason other than someone on the radio wasn't addressing somebody uniquely.
I have a question. If you're the wingman and a command gets called out and you didn't hear it or whatever, do you say anything back or do you just wait that 3/4 second or second for him to repeat?
What?
So if the flight leader calls out a command to the wingman and you're the wingman and you didn't hear it correctly, do you do you just not say anything and wait for him to repeat it, or do you say back you didn't hear it? Or
In the case of a directive transmission,
right?
it's better to just not say anything. You could come back on the radio, say again, but it's just going to unnecessarily clutter up the communication.
Okay.
Should know that he's going to retransmit that if you aren't doing what he directed you to do. But again, the onus is on the person doing the directing. You need to be clear and concise in delivering exactly what you need. And the time pressure is on, so you don't have time to sit there and think for 2 or 3 seconds about the phrasing you're going to use. You just need to instinctively say it. The nice part is these are all very short. So there's just, hammer 11, brake left. Hammer 11, jink now. Hammer 11, roll high. Hammer 11, extend. These are simple, the minimum number of syllables, the minimum number of words to communicate the directive action that pilot should take with his aircraft. So there aren't, it's not like a library of 40 things that you have to memorize, but there's more than 2 or 3. Okay, questions on directive transmissions as we've talked about so far. Okay, directive transmissions are the highest classification of importance of communication that can happen. Everything else is lower priority. Telling the AIC controller what's happening is lower priority. Calling out tally on additional bandits is lower priority. Directive transmissions are things that the other aircraft needs to execute right now to prevent them from getting killed, or to potentially put them into an advantageous position to enact the kill. You don't necessarily have to be defensive. You can, if you're observing this fight from afar, 3 or 4 nautical miles away, and Hammer 11 in this case is pursuing a bandit in a right-hand turn, and another bandit who's coming up behind him overshoots and tries to pull left instead of right to get it back on your guy's 6 o'clock, but he hoses up that maneuver, and he doesn't have a lot of energy for maneuverability. You might call out on the radio, Hammer 11, brake left, switch to new bandit at your 10 o'clock low. Right? I mean, and if he does it, he's going to disengage from from a pursuit that he isn't necessarily going to get a kill on the next 6 seconds for something that is a sure kill, and then it reduces everybody's workload. Now, instead of 2-on-1, it's 1-on-1. Well, instead of 2-on-1 down there, it's really 2v2, but you might be the guy up high or out of the fight. This other bandit has swooped in, and in principle it's 2-on-1, so he's killed that guy. Now, instead of it being 2-on-1, it's 1-on-1 down there, but it's really 2-on-1 because you're up there with your eyeballs. That other guy may bug out. And so that one kill effectively got rid of 2 threat aircraft. So, I mean, I'm just pointing out it's not necessarily defensive in nature only. You may have directive comms to enact a quick kill while you're on the. Okay, questions on directive communications as we've talked about thus far. Okay, in my example, I was giving kind of a directive transmission and then following it up with some amplifying information on essentially explaining to him why I told him to brake left. He doesn't know why. He's got his eyes focused on this guy. Okay, I'm trying to get around on this guy, maneuvering. All of a sudden, the radio pipes up, hammer 1-1, brake left. Oh, shit, I better roll left and brake, pull. In the middle of the pull, while I'm seeing that he's essentially acknowledged that he's received that transmission and he's acting on it, I'm now providing additional information. Hey, I didn't tell you to brake left because you had a missile on your tail or something. I'm breaking you off this engagement to put you onto another bandit. Here he is at your 10 o'clock low. So your head's immediately swinging to try to find that guy. And the implied message is, I would not have done that unless you were going to have a much easier time killing this guy than the guy that you were already on and had your eyes caged to. So you need to have implicit trust that the guy who's feeding you this information isn't an idiot. And step one in not being an idiot in air combat maneuvering is not being an idiot in basic fighter maneuver. Questions on the kind of follow-up to a directive transmission, and then when I see that airplane complying, immediately providing the amplifying information to answer questions that are undoubtedly in his mind, to remove any question that I'm an idiot, cage his mind to the new advantageous situation, and not only maximize situational awareness again, because he broke eyes on the guy he was pursuing, but it instills maximum situational awareness and maximum trust between the two of you. Questions on why that happens? Okay. So after you have directive transmissions, or if they aren't needed, you've transmitted the directive transmission in my example, and then you needed some additional amplifying information, or you might be in a situation where directive transmissions aren't needed. For example, you're head-to-head in the merge, you have good flight cohesion, everyone knows where each other is, everyone's in a good formation, you decided on what formation you were going to be in the merge, you know the merge is going to happen in 5 seconds. All right, so here's the merge. No directive transmissions necessarily required. So the next class of transmission is a descriptive transmission. So a descriptive transmission has a certain format to it. Just like in cadet level 0, when we talked about the basic communication format for everything. This is me, here's the message. Descriptive transmissions have a similar format, and essentially what you are doing is communicating the most important information first to the least important information towards the end of the message. So for the guys who like the visuals, I'm going to get a visual here to put up on this digital whiteboard. So this is the formula. Again, it's going to start with who it is you're talking to, so that anyone who's not that guy can tune out the rest of the message and get back to doing whatever mental tasks he needs to be focused on. So if you're calling up somebody, Hammer 11, let's say, is the guy that you are calling, your comm format is going to be Hammer 11, tally, tally bandit or hostile or whatever it is. Then you're going to, instead of provide a clock position, you're going to provide a direction first to get his head automatically flowing in the right direction. Hammer 11, tally bandit, left, 8 o'clock. So he's Hammer 11. Hey, that's me. By the time he's processed, hey, that's me, you've already got Tally Bandit coming across the radio. Oh, shit, there's a guy. Where is he? Left. I better start looking left. And as my head's looking left, I'm probably at the 11 o'clock position now. I get 8 o'clock. All right, continue to turn. There he is coming up behind me in my rear left quarter. At the minimum, that gets situational awareness to where the guy is. Now, if you happen to have a good idea, you can provide some additional information as part of the same transmission. Hammer 11, tally bandit, left, 8 o'clock, 4 miles, low. Now there's no question where to look, right? This guy's looking. Okay, I'm looking to the left. 8 o'clock. I don't see anything. Well, how far away is he? 4 miles? Oh, shit. I was looking for him at 10 miles. Okay, I'm looking for him at 4 miles. I still don't see anything. He's low. Oh, I better roll the airplane left a little bit. Okay, I got him. Boom. 8 o'clock low. Questions on this format for a descriptive transmission? Okay. Just like when you were learning radio comms at cadet level 0, it's fine to have this formula, but you're going to really learn it as you employ it and use it, and it's going to take many dozens of instances before you kind of knock out all the bugs in the formula. Okay, so there may be times, as I implied before towards the end of the section on directive transmissions, where you provide a directive transmission and then you want to provide some amplifying information. That amplifying information is probably going to be something along the lines of the descriptive transmission, although you can probably dump the call sign part because you've already hailed the guy. So you might do something like Hammer 11, break right. And you give a pause and wait to sure that this guy is doing what you told him to do. He hasn't spaced out or whatever. Okay, I see him rolling right and he's starting to pull hard. Then I'll say bandit, right, 4 o'clock, 9,000 feet, low. That's why I'm telling you to break right. Hey, there's a bandit down there. He's trying to maneuver on you. I want to put your head, your eyeballs directly on him, because step one in winning or losing the BFM and therefore the ACM fight is not knowing where the threat is and having your eyeballs locked onto him. Questions on how to follow directive transmissions with some descriptive transmissions to amplify situational awareness. Okay, so this is part of a broad theme that we are communicating throughout most of Air-to-Air Thread 2. When your situational awareness drops below 95%, you're in trouble. If your situational awareness is below 80%, you're at risk of being killed. Some people think, well, if it's below 40%, that's where it's danger. If it's below 20%, that's where it's danger. If your situational awareness is below 80%, the alarm level should be to the point that I could be killed at any time and I would have no idea it was coming. If your situational awareness is below 95%, alarm bells should be going off. Something is going really sideways here and we are missing things. You should start to seriously consider pulling out of whatever situation you're in because for whatever reason, the flight's overall situational awareness is below 95%. Questions on kind of the situational awareness meter and where your alarm levels should be on that meter. Okay,
Yeah.
similarly, if you have a wingman who's constantly peppering you with information about where he is, information about where the bandits are, and it's continuous. So the oldest information you have is only 6 or 7 seconds old. It instills confidence that your estimation of your situational awareness meter is above 95%, and it's staying there because everybody is so on top of their game. Everybody's SA meter is above 95%, that we're all able to provide additional situational awareness to everyone to maintain that top 5% region. That's really your feedback, is when people you hear on the radio chatter starts to become infrequent. The amount of time that has elapsed before information is refreshed starts to leak into the 8 to 14-second range. You happen to notice something that your wingman didn't, but he really should have been in a position to notice that. That's when the alarm bells start going off. Oh shit, the SA meter's at 80, 70, 60%. Something's really going sideways. And that situational awareness meter can drop from 95% to 60% in just 10 seconds. And as air-to-air thread 1, BFM told you, situational awareness is the difference between life and death. If you don't know exactly where the adversary is at all times, if your last update on them is more than a second ago, that situational awareness meter is beginning to roll back really, 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 really fast. Questions on the situational awareness meter that's behind all this and is really the motivating reason why we have descriptive calls for sure, and even directive transmission. Okay, if the skills of everybody involved are high and the situational awareness meter of everybody involved is high, directive transmissions tend to be infrequent or non-existent. So another way to kind of get immediate measurements on where the situational awareness meter is how frequently directive transmissions are coming across the, and whether those directive transmissions are reactionary or they are proactive. Someone has seen a very narrow window that you can pounce on the enemy, and they gave you a directive transmission to get there. That's a clue that the situational awareness meter is essentially at 100%, at least for that guy. If it starts to be reactionary, oh shit, some bandit swooped in and I wasn't aware of him, and all of a sudden he's in a position to put missiles on you or guns, and now I'm giving you directive transmissions to try to break off of him, that lets you know that guy's situational awareness meter is probably in the 60% range. It wasn't low enough that he missed him completely, but it is low enough that he didn't notice that this guy was getting into a bad position until it was too late. All right. Uh, Last chance for questions then on um, descriptive transmissions, directive transmissions, and kind of the mythical situational awareness.
Yeah. Is there, since we have the whiteboard up, is there a good sort of visual, I guess, for like where the wingman should be? Like, for instance, if you are in kind of a fur ball, or just in general, to provide that?
Yep, we're about to talk about that when we talk about positioning. Right now, we're just talking about communication.
Sorry, you made it sound like that. We were about to hop in, so my bad.
Other questions on directive, descriptive communications, or the mythical situational awareness? Okay, So let's talk about positioning here. So there's two broad roles when you are within visual range combat. You're essentially in air combat maneuvering. One role is called the shooter. This is the guy that's going to employ weapons. The other role is called the eyeball. This guy is not going to employ weapons except in extraordinary circumstances. His job is to, as the name implies, be on the lookout for a lot of things. The guy who's in the shooter role generally has his eyes fixed on the thing that he intends to blow out of the sky. And he's padlocked on that thing. He doesn't have the luxury of looking all around, looking back, and checking his six. His eyes are locked on that guy. He's watching whatever instrumentation he has to make sure he's got radar lock if he's going to provide radar assistance to the cueing of the missile, or he's going to get radar information for his gun sight or whatever it is. So, if he's got a tally in his sight, bandit in his sights, boom, he's the shooter. That's where his eyes are almost 100% of the time. That means everything else in the sky is the job of the eyeball to look at. The eyeball's job includes sliding up along a target to VID it. The shooter sits back there, ready to pull the trigger if that thing lets loose bombs or cruise missiles or starts to make a maneuver or it's declared hostile or whatever. So it's the shooter's job to scoot up and see, what is this thing? Is it a JF-17? Is it an F-16? Is it an F-5? Is it a MiG-21? What is it? The eyeball's job is also to look around, to check the shooter's 6 o'clock. While we're dicking around with this thing, was there another fighter that snuck up behind the shooter? The shooter's not looking there. He's looking right in front of him at the target he's supposed to be looking. Who's watching the eyeball 6? It's also the job of the eyeball to watch his own 6. So the eyeball tends to be a fluid guy. He's moving around all the time. The shooter's job is to stick himself right in the control zone and stay there until he does not have to destroy that thing, or he is directed, he is told to switch targets. Questions on the basics of the eyeball and shooter role? Okay. So, this is a session on elementary ACM comms, not elementary ACM. For elementary ACM, which we will start in air-to-air thread 3, the shooter's job, as it implies, is to effect the kill. Therefore, the shooter's job, as I just said, is to get himself in the control zone and stay there until it comes time to employ weapons, and then employ them with maximal effect and destroy the adversary. And this has been a problem in the Euro time zone AIC classes, so I'm going to hammer it home here. Your job as the shooter is to destroy the adversary, not to shoot him until you see smoke coming out of him and he starts spiraling to the earth. Make sure he's destroyed. Questions on that concept? That means his plane is breaking apart, or you followed him all the way until he hit the ground. If you just shoot him and some smoke comes out and you figure he's dead, I guarantee that guy's going to swing around either because he was spoofing you, or with the last energy left in his plane, fire off a missile at you because you thought he wasn't a factor. And you can bet I've told the Op4 guys that, and to take advantage of any opportunity they can if you mistakenly think they're dead and then declare them mentally in your own mind not a factor and move on to the next. They are on the lookout for it, and they are under the agreement, I didn't even have to tell them, they will punish you immediately for that by shoving missiles and guns right up your ass. Questions on that concept, since apparently we did not hammer it home enough in air-to-air threat.
Yeah. So with you saying that, that tells me to shoot 2 missiles. Is that, in addition to
Actually, so we have not talked about kind of rationing your munitions. Right now, in principle, you have infinite munitions and what. But yeah, you don't necessarily have infinite missiles out there. You don't know what's coming, right? You were tasked to be a fighter sweep, or you were tasked to be defensive counter air to have a cap for an hour. If you're going to get into an engagement in the first 10 minutes of your cap and you're going to blow your wad on all your missiles, who's going to cover the other 50 minutes? Anyway, that's not something we're going to deal with now. We'll start asking those questions in air-to-air thread 3 and 4. But just because 2 missiles has a higher probability of kill versus 1 doesn't mean you should fire 8 missiles to ensure that one guy.
right? I guess I was more or less asking. I guess since obviously at some point somebody did something that you didn't like, if we should interpret that, because to your point, I try to pretend that I have finite ammo and I only shoot 1 missile, and I'm very conservative with guns. But if I'm just trying to interpret that, and I guess based on what you said, it should be do exactly what you said. Just make sure they either break up, eject, or we see them explode in the ground.
Right. I mean, like I mentioned before, you should be decidedly in the control zone, and you should know exactly how to employ your weapons with maximal. Right. So I see a lot of lazy shots. Oh, I got a guy. He's pulling up. We're in a turning fight. He's up probably 30 degrees on me, but hey, I've got a missile. I'm going to fire it. Because for whatever reason, you think missiles are magic kill vehicles. And then, to your dismay, that missile doesn't even track, or it flies beyond them because it can't pull the number of Gs or whatever. You're firing outside the missile's ideal engagement envelope. As the shooter, you have 100% of your attention dedicated to ensuring that you're in the control zone. And it's the control zone in part because it provides you the option to get the ideal orientation between you and the adversary for weapons employment. So if you did not get the ideal orientation, it's your problem, and you have poor BFM skills before you even came to ACM. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So again, the shooter's job is to ensure that that adversary is dead. If you skip him and he isn't dead, A, he's going to shoot you down, but B, whose job do you think it is to re-engage him? It's not the eyeball's job. He's up there doing stuff. He's peppering you with information. You are intentionally putting a bandit on your 6 o'clock, a bandit who's now pissed off at you because you shot at him, and also in his mind, there is now no confusion about whether you are hostile to him or not. Make sure he's dead before you move on. If you can't make sure he's dead, you failed air-to-air thread 1. Questions on that concept? Okay, so the shooter, as I mentioned, his job is to stay in the control zone and employ weapons with deadly effect on the adversary. And, by the way, his job is to stick with that adversary. If another threat is coming in on your 6, the eyeball should be aware enough to let you know that is happening and provide appropriate directive communication at the appropriate time to break that engagement, to go defensive, break left, whatever it is you're going to do. Or later on, we'll talk about how to bring the eyeball into the fight to have a 2v2. Again, those are things we're going to talk about in elementary ACM. So at this point, before air-to-air thread 3, you we're just working on elementary ACM comms. Whoever is the eyeball is going to be up and out of the fight, and we're going to talk about what the definition of all that is. The other guy is the shooter, and that guy's job is to kill the guy in front of him at the appropriate time before turning his attention to potentially another threat. Questions on that construct for this stage of the game? Okay. Then, as part of your training, and as part of your training only, the guy who is going to be the eyeball should be up above the fight about 2 to 4 nautical miles. So that, and just orbit up there, just so that you're looking down and you can see the fight from a top-down point of view. It's going to give you a view that the shooter guy is not likely to have, because very infrequently are engagements entirely in the vertical plane. So for training at this stage only, you are going to be up above that fight 2 to 4 nautical miles. Part of the reason you're going to be up above that fight is it is a clear indication to the human OPFOR guys that you are playing the role of the eyeball and they should not engage you. Your job at this stage is to learn how to provide those directive calls or those situational awareness amplifying descriptive calls of what's happening. That's what you're working on. So you won't come out of that to engage the bandits in 2v2 or 2v1 fighting. It's just going to be the shooter down there, either 1v1 or potentially 1v2. And your job as the eyeball is to pepper that guy with the appropriate comms. And the guy's job down there as the shooter is to learn how to listen to all that while essentially practicing BFM. Questions on that basic construct before I continue?
This is exactly what you were doing with Stal, like 2, 3 weeks ago in AIC.
Correct. I was giving him the training on what it was like to hear those calls and demonstrating to everyone listening what was coming up.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, those were pretty much all the descriptive transmissions.
Correct. So I was not providing him any directive transmissions because he wasn't necessarily prepared to hear them. I was simply providing him situational awareness descriptive transmissions and ensuring that he knew where I was, because in his view, he's got a bunch of airplanes around him and which ones are the bad guy. So I'm beginning to answer where I am and ensure that in his mind, I am not in his front half so that he can employ missiles risk-free.
Okay, cool.
Other questions on the basics of this construct before I continue? And this, by the way, is only at this stage of
I guess if this is skipping ahead too far to tonight, tell me. But am I to assume then that we're not going to effectively be doing BFM as soon as we merge with the OPFOR guys tonight?
that we're going to talk about, but for what I'm talking about now, for the training of elementary ACM comms, we're just doing the comms piece, not elementary ACM. So, the leading question that you had now about 15 minutes ago was, what about the positioning? So after answering all that, I'm now answering what the positioning is for the guy who's going to be the eyeball.
Got it, yeah, and I guess you kind of see where I'm going with that then. All right.
Right. Okay. Then, as I've been kind of foot stomping, for this stage of the training only, the eyeball is up above the fight 2 to 4 nautical miles. So it's clear that you're out of the fight, but you're still close enough that you can see what's going on and provide either directive communication or descriptive situational awareness amplifying communication. When you get to air-to-air thread 3 and we start talking about air combat maneuvering, that is not where you should be. We're going to position you pretty much anywhere but that position. And we're going to talk about why you shouldn't be in that position. But for the time being, we're going to put you into the position that you should not be later on in your career. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The principal two reasons are to give a visual indicator to the human OPFOR that this guy is not going to be the factor guy that you should engage, and to facilitate you seeing what's happening with the fight. The ideal position, we're going to talk about variations of this when we talk about ACM and air-to-air threat 3. But the ideal position is that you are off to the side of the fight, for potentially as many as 6 nautical miles away from the fight, so that you have in your field of view all of that furball happening over there, and you can see any aircraft that are coming into that furball, all without having to turn your head a bunch of directions. You still have to turn your head a bunch of directions to see what's coming, but at least all of that kind of furball is contained in one quadrant from your point of view. The distance we're going to talk about, it helps you engage, it helps you do some other things, but as you can imagine, the geometry of what you're seeing is harder when you're offset potentially that far away and you're looking at it from an oblique angle. You will, if your goal is to see what is happening, for example, the past several evolutions, I have been in that position directly above the fight 2 to 4 nautical miles, because I needed to see what was happening so that I could provide instructor or evaluator feedback at the end of the evolution. So that's the prime position to see what is happening, but it is not the prime position to help that guy, which is really going to be your role as you employ 2 ships versus the adversary, which we call ACM. So at this stage only, you should be directly above the furball 2 to 4 nautical miles. But later on, that is decidedly where you should not be when we learn proper ACM. Questions on this kind of artifact of training, but it's really there to help you learn how to recognize the fight from kind of a third-party point of view, and to provide a visual signal to the human OPFOR that you are the fighter who is not the engaged fighter. Questions on that? Okay, so I've snuck in some terminology there. We've talked about the shooter and the eyeball. The shooter, when you get into the turning fight, isn't necessarily the shooter because he's not shooting yet. He's trying to get into a good position. So that guy is called the engaged fighter. And the eyeball has a more generic role. He's called the supporting fighter. So those are some ACM terms, and it's kind of an evolution. So shooter and eyeball are kind of specific. This is what you're doing. You're the guy who's going to pull the trigger. I'm providing situational awareness. I'm being the eyeball. More generally, there's the engaged fighter, the guy who's actually doing the turning and who's in the fight, and the supporting fighter who may be in the fight, but he's spending most of the time outside of it, maintaining the high level of situational awareness for both aircraft. So, variations that are subtle, but they're going to become important later for ACM, but introducing this new term of the engaged and the supporting fighter. Anyway, questions on those terms that I've kind of snuck in there?
Yeah, so I guess before you go into like a merge, would you kind of know, hey, you're a shooter, you're eyeball, or is that dynamic?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about that now that we've talked about all these roles. So what is the comms flow as we get into the... But before we do that, questions, any other questions on the engaged versus the supporting fighter term, and how they're a little bit more generic than shooter and eyeball, respectively?
The difference between the supporting fighter and the free fighter?
Not much. Variations on a term. Other questions on the engaged versus supporting fighter terminology? Okay. So, as Stahl asked, as you get into the merge, roles need to be clearly defined. So there's no confusion. You want to go into the merge with the maximum situational awareness possible. So if you're hammer 1 flight, let's say, as you get into the merge, hammer 1-1 in left eyeball, or hammer 1-1 in left shooter. So you're coming in to aircraft that are on your left, and you're either going to be the eyeball or the shooter. And you're giving your full call sign. So you're not saying 1, or it's hammer 1-1. So there's no confusion. Hammer 1-1, that's me. And I'm saying my own call sign. Hammer 1-1 in left shooter. The implication is my wingman, hammer 1-1, hammer 1-2, is going to be the complement of whatever I'm not, right? So he's going to come back on the radio and give his full call sign and acknowledge what's happening. Hammer 1-2 in left eyeball. I've told the flight we're going into this merge, we're going in left, and I'm going to be the shooter. Fine. My wingman's going to acknowledge that and give us full call sign so there's no confusion. Maximum situational awareness. We should be at 100% on the situational awareness meter. Hammer 1-2 in left, i.e. I'm coming with you, and I'm going to be the eyeball. Questions on those radio comms? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what some comms that happen right before that. We are anticipating the merge. The flight lead especially is anticipating the merge because he's been directing this flight towards the threat group. When it comes time for the merge, when the adversaries are kind of, 6 nautical miles out, 5 nautical miles out, something like that, you are going to provide a situational awareness amplifying call on the radio. So most of our evolutions in our AIC classes, the threat groups have been coming from the north. So as we are getting towards that merge, I know, my wingman doesn't necessarily know, but I know I've set up the lateral separation so we are to the east. These guys are to our north coming at us. I know I intend to take these guys down the left side and then roll into them and get onto their 6. My wingman doesn't necessarily know that, but maybe I've communicated it, but I communicated it as I was explaining it, and that was 45 seconds ago as we were closing in on these guys, whatever. So as it comes time for the merge, you are going to tell the hammer 1 flight, hammer 1, defend north. That defend call, it's really a directive call, although it's not necessarily as time sensitive as break left. Hammer 1, defend north. It wakes everybody up in the hammer 1 flight. Hey, we got threats to the north and we need to go defensive. Hammer 1, defend north. Wakes everybody up. When you hear that word defend, it's almost as serious or potentially as serious as when the AIC controller phones you up and says merge. So situational awareness at 100%. Hammer 1, defend north. Give it a second. Let everybody wake up. Whoa, what the hell's happening? Hammer 1-1 in left shooter. Wingman should be awake now. Oh, okay. Whoa. Okay. Defend north. Yeah, I got. Okay. Yeah, he's going to be the shooter. Boom. I got it. Hammer 1-2 in left eyeball. And then you roll left and get in behind these guys. Questions on that comms flow so far? Okay. So Hammer 1-1 has got himself, he's turning, he's getting into the control zone. Hammer 1-2 is maneuvering in a similar manner, but he has a different objective. His objective is to visually identify the group. So he's going to give a radio call either on the TAC freak or potentially on the AIC freak, because your job is to identify this group. He's going to say hammer 1-2, stand by first group, or hammer 1-2, stand by east group, whatever the group name was. He's letting everyone know I'm the eyeball, stand by while I try to figure out what the hell this thing is. And that's as he's maneuvering it. So, okay, I see my flight lead is in the shooter role. I'm sliding up on his left. I'm going to see what this thing is. It looks like it might be a MiG-21. It looks kind of delta wing, but it's single engine, but it could be an F-16. It could be a JF-17. I'm going to get closer. As he's doing that, hammer 1-2, stand by, east group. It cages the AIC controller's mind. Okay, when this guy starts to say whatever it is, that's the East group or the first group or whatever the group label was. Questions on that comms before Okay. So now the eyeball has taken some time. He's positioned himself. He's gotten to look at this airplane a little bit closer, or from the side, or maybe from the bottom, or from the top. He's maneuvered around, and he's got identification on this thing. Let's say I don't know, let's say it meets the rules of engagement. The enemy is flying MiG-29s, and the only people around that fly MiG-29s are the enemy. And if you see the enemy in this part of the sky, you're free to kill them. So let's say he identifies MiG-29s. He's going to give a directive call on the radio. And he's going to give that directive call on the radio. I mean, I guess it could be on the TAC Freak too, but the AIC controller definitely needs to know at some point. That call is going to be a directive call. That thing is something we can shoot, so you're going to say the word shoot. And you're going to say it twice because it was that important to make sure no one misheard what was happening. You're going to say shoot, shoot, fulcrums. MiG-29. You're not going to say MiG-29. That's too many syllables. Shoot, shoot, fulcrums. And then East Group hostile. That tells the AIC controller and everyone else who's listening on the net, I've identified this group. They're fulcrums. They've met the criteria. I've released the shooter to shoot him. And that was the first call that came about. So by the time I'm saying East Group hostile, there's probably a missile already coming off the rail. But then I'm going to declare that group for the AIC controller and everyone else who's paying attention. Shoot, shoot, fulcrums, East group, hostile. And shortly thereafter, or potentially at the same time, maybe on a different frequency. You might have said that on the AIC controller frequency, potentially on your own internal TAC frequency or whatever. Hammer 1-1, the flight lead is going to come back immediately. Hammer 1-1, guns, 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 or Hammer 1-1, Fox 2, or whatever. Questions on that comms flow?
Yeah, actually.
All right.
Sorry. Can you, like, now that you've kind of explained it, just go back through the whole sequence kind of in order, so I could kind of hear it without the commentary.
I've also put up the text in our whiteboard for the guys who like to see. So it might be something like Hammer 1, defend north. Give about 3 seconds as we get close. We're getting prepared to start to break left and get in on these guys 6. Hammer 1-1, in left, shooter. Immediately, Hammer 1-2 is coming back on the radio. Hammer 1-2, in left, eyeball. Okay, you're maneuvering. The flight lead, Hammer 1-1, is getting into the control zone, getting ready to employ weapons. Hammer 1-2 is maneuvering. He's trying to identify what this group is. He's probably calling on the radio. If we were taking him down the left side, he took a look. Oh, man. I see twin tails. I see twin engines. Could be F-15s, MiG-29s, Su-27 possibly. Definitely not a MiG-21. MiG-21 only has one engine. Definitely not a MiG-15, right? I mean, he's got all the WEF stuff going on in his head. While he's doing that, he's probably phoning up on the AIC freak, Hammer 1-2, stand by East Group or First Group or Poppet Group or whatever the group name was. Everyone should have maximum situational awareness. There should be no question what the name of this group is that we just merged with. And if you are saying these things, you're not going to get the AIC controller jumping down your throat, giving you extraneous information, Hammer 1 flight merged. You guys know where you are. You have maximum situational awareness. The AIC controller is listening. He doesn't have to get in there and screw you up. It takes some time. I don't know. You had to go high, you had to go low, you had to pull up left, whatever it is. Took some time, maybe as much as 10 seconds to get a VID on this thing. Meanwhile, Hammer 11's ready to go. Yep, ready. Got them locked up. Ready to go, man. Whenever you say it. So one option is, yeah, this is definitely a guy that has met the criteria for engagement. There is no need to ask anyone's permission if you know for sure it has met the criteria of engagement. Come on the radio. You don't even have to say your call sign, just immediate, because everyone's following this timeline. Shoot, fulcrums, East Group hostile. It improves everybody's situational awareness. You're feeding information back to the AIC controller. That's what you should be doing, because you're literally within arm's reach of this. And then, of course, the associated tactical call of Hammer 11, Fox 2, or Guns, or however you're engaging. Questions on that timeline and the terminology that was used here? Okay, some other options. You may discover that this particular aircraft or group is friendlies. They're having problems. I don't know. They're not on the right frequency. Whatever it is. I don't know. Whatever. But for whatever reason, they aren't a factor. Instead of shoot, obviously you don't want to do that. You're going to call skip it, and you're going to call skip it twice, just like you called shoot twice, so there's no confusion about what the shooter should do. You're going to call skip it, East Group friendly. You don't necessarily have to identify the group because it's friendly. The fact that they're F4s or F16s, whatever, doesn't really matter. Skip it. Pop-up group. And that tells the shooter, all right, not only are we not going to shoot this guy, and they're friendly, we're going to disengage. And so you can immediately begin to disengage, flow back to wherever you're going to. So if you're the flight lead, my example, the flight lead was the shooter, right? So the wingman is the eyeball. He's out there. He's calling skip it. East Group or West Group or Pop-Up Group or First Group, whatever that group name is, friendly. He's now ready to disengage from this group, but he can't because he's not the flight lead. So the flight lead is going to phone up and say, Hammer 1 flight, and you can use your tactical turns if you want. Hammer 1 flight, cross turn or hook left or turn right or whatever, reference heading 210. And you just pull away from this thing and get back to your job as an airborne intercept group. When it's skip it, friendlies, your job for the intercept is done. There's no reason to hang out there anymore. Turn off from it, get back together, get your flight formation and flight integrity, and get flowing in a direction where you can. Questions on kind of the alternative here where it wasn't hostile, it was friendly. Okay. So I guess there's a third option where it's not necessarily friendly and it's not necessarily hostile. It could be hostile. It's a bogey or a bandit, but you're not allowed to engage it. That's when you're going to have a discussion with someone, probably the AIC controller. So you had your Hammer 1-2 standby East Group. Took some time to figure it out. East Group fulcrums, bogey, or East Group fulcrums, bandit. And then you can ask the AIC controller, hey, what do you want me to do with these things, essentially? But you probably don't even, if the AIC controller is good, you probably don't necessarily need to do that. The AIC controller is monitoring it. He's classified it now. Okay, I got it from the fighters. These things are fulcrums. They're bandit. They haven't taken any hostile action. I got it. Okay, I'm going to, it may not be an immediate radio call. I got to have a discussion with the commander or phone up the commander on the radio. But if that happens, you'll probably get Hammer 1 flight, magic, or whatever, standby, implying, keep doing what you're doing, escort this thing. I'm going to find out what's going on. Okay, continue escort, or you're clear to engage, or pop-up group hostile, whatever it is. So there's kind of a third option. Well, what if it's not friendlies, and what if it's not something you can immediately blow out of the sky? It's kind of what you've already been doing, but you need to identify them and again provide the group name so there's no question who it is you're talking about. Situational awareness needs to be almost at 100%. Okay, questions on those kind of 3 variations of the communication flow here. Okay, so we've done the academics portion. It's all neat. We've seen text and pictures, and isn't that nice? But as you all know, things are very different when you're into the cockpit. So we're going to get into the cockpit now. I am going to fly as the threat, and you are going to get practice having some of these calls. So the first practice you're going to get is kind of the merge timeline, the thing that we just talked about. Hammer 1, defend west, defend south, defend north, whatever it is. How you're going to maneuver in left, in right, in high, in low. Who's going to be the eyeball? Who's going to be the shooter? The other guy is going to acknowledge and give the compliment. Then we'll do, a standby. Actually, we shouldn't do standby. We'll save that part for the AIC class. So you'll just get into the merge in whatever, and then I'll start maneuvering against you. And the supporting fighter or free fighter, if you like, you'll go up high 2 to 4 nautical miles above the fight. We'll just do some turns, simulate, non-firing BFM. We'll just get into some turns and give the guy up there some practice calling things out. I'll try to get in behind you. We may artificially do that so you can pretend like you're unaware that a fighter has joined on your 6, and you get some practice with directive communications. And we'll just exercise things that way until it's time for the AIC class to begin. Questions on what we're about to do in the virtual cockpit?
Yeah, I've got a clarifying question. Looking at the text you provided, it looks like this example is lead giving directives at the beginning, but then moving into the position of being eyeball rather than shooter. My question, and I apologize if maybe you covered this somewhere in there, I didn't hear it, is there is still a fundamental difference between shooter does not automatically become lead. Those two roles are still distinct, correct? So lead can be
Correct.
shooter or defend or eyeball. Wing can be shooter or eyeball, but they remain lead and wing, and lead is still giving the directives regardless of what position they're in.
So lead is not necessarily giving directives regardless of what position he's.
Okay.
So flight lead and all that really only matters when you need to operate as a 2 ship to do things. Essentially whenever you're outside of air combat maneuvering. When you're in ACM, you have these special roles of engaged fighter and supporting fighter. So at that point, it's not like, okay, it's the lead's job to do X, Y, and Z. Lead and wing or trail almost don't matter at that point.
Okay, so it's just a coincidence then that in this little scenario you left there, lead is giving shoot because he's the eyeball seeing what's going on, not because
Correct. Right. I mean, this is kind of analogous to, when you're just flying around, someone has to be responsible. So I don't know, to use an army analogy, right? The sergeant's responsible and all the privates are doing what he's supposed to be doing. Go to wedge formation, go to diamond formation, right? Whatever it is. But when you get into the firefight, you don't wait for the sergeant to tell you to shoot stuff or whatever. If you see an enemy, you call him out, or you tell the guy with the squad automatic weapon, hey, shoot the guy over there. Even if he outranks you, no one gives a shit in the moment because you're fighting for your life.
Right. So so that actually clarifies it even more. It's not because you're lead. It's not because you're necessarily the eyeball. It's because you're the one with the highest amount of SA that this person needs.
Correct. You're operating together as a unit, and so whoever has the best information, and it's sometimes difficult to determine who has the best information, but if you all practice together and have trust in each other, then you can be pretty close to reality. It's whoever has the best information telling the person who does not have the best information what to do.
And I mean, obviously, in most situations, I'm sure there are some examples we could find where it's not the case. But in most situations, by the time eyeball calls shoot, shoot, hopefully the person that's in the control zone in the position to actually do that would be seeing him as well. So it's redundant more than.
Right. Well, so.
Right, like shooter is not going to sit there in the control zone with a lock on a hostile, waiting for eyeball to say shoot.
Potentially. So that guy is behind him, and he doesn't necessarily know what the classification of that group is.
Okay. But
So
in the situation, if he does, then it would be a different scenario.
Yeah, so there is a variation there. So let's say the shooter is in prime position to take the shot, and the eyeball is maneuvering to get a look at this group. And for whatever reason, some extraneous information comes about, and let's say the AIC controller happens to now know, hey, the group that you're merged with, they're hostile and you're cleared to engage. The shooter does not necessarily pull the trigger at that point because he's behind this bandit. Where the hell is his wingman? If his wingman's saddled up alongside of him trying to identify this guy or get visual contact with the pilot or whatever, and he lets that missile loose and he hits his wingman, who's responsible? So that may be a directive call from the shooter. Let's say the shooter is the wingman and the flight lead is the guy who's the eyeball. So the wingman's in position. And the flight lead says, stand by. He's trying to get up there. And suddenly Magic or whoever the IRC controller is pipes up and says, East group, one you're merged with, hostile, cleared to engage. The wingman should be aware enough of what's in front of him. He needs to immediately tell Hammer 1-1, break left, to get him out of that picture so that he can employ weapons. And once he's out of that picture, then he can call Fox 2 or guns or whatever. And at that point, there should be enough situational awareness that the flight lead, who was instructed to break left, initially doesn't know why, but as soon as he hears Fox 2 and he's come around, at that point, you've called Fox 2, you're probably on the flight lead's 6 as he's breaking left. He's going to swing his head around and see what's happening. Oh, it wasn't because someone snuck up behind us. It was because he wanted me to get the hell out of the way so he can employ weapons on this now hostile.
So I may be missing something here, but if the wing is in a better position to fire, couldn't you, upon receiving that information from AIC, give the shoot command? Or at that point, that's just not how it would be done because that person is not the shooter.
So if you give the shoot command, now you're in a real interesting situation. You've cleared the shooter to shoot while you are still in the area where you can be. So if the shooter shoots, he's essentially almost blameless, although you could argue he should have situational awareness of where the other flight members are. But the alternative is the guy who was the eyeball saw something that was worth taking the risk. This guy was about to, drop nuclear weapons or whatever. Take this guy out before he has the chance to do that. And if you happen to hit me, oh well. But that gets into a real dicey situation. So I would not call shoot in that situation unless you're sure the employment of weapons right now is significantly better than the employment of weapons 5 or 6 seconds from now when you're not in the picture.
Gotcha.
Just an anecdote here. I remember from earlier AIC when I saw an ejection and I said, I see a shoot. I'm called back to that because you told me not to say shoot, and that's why. So I guess I'm just reiterating that for other people that might say, oh yeah, I see a shoot or a good shoot or whatever.
Right. That was my caution about that. Is like, okay, you don't necessarily know why right now, but be careful of using that word on the radio. It's fine when the engagement's done and there's really no possibility of it being confused, but you don't want to do it in the moment. So there's two adversaries, you've killed one, you're moving in on the other one, and someone gives that command or says that word on the radio. Probably not the best time for that. Things that keep the situational awareness near 100%, certainly north of 95%. Other questions on kind of everything that we talked about before we get into the virtual cockpit? Okay, so I will get onto the Op4 side and fly towards you all, and hopefully we can get to that merge quickly, and then we'll practice kind of that initial comms mechanics into the merge, kicking the guy who's going to be the eyeball or supporting fighter up 2 to 4 nautical miles, and you just kind of orbit over the fight. The fight will snake around, so it's not necessarily a single orbit, so you may have to maneuver yourself to keep yourself above the fight, but your job is just to be up there and out of it and peppering the engaged fighter with situational awareness amplifying calls or directive calls. Questions on what we're about to do here? Okay. There's a lot ATC update. Because I didn't update this machine. So I recommend just hopping into the AIC bird, so you're already airborne, and apparently I'm going to update my lot ATC before I jump into this plane.
I don't think I have a AIC plane, so I'll just observe this one here.
When we'll use the in-game channels that we already use, 249.8 and 130.1.
If I am allowed, I'm gonna stream my loud ADC soon. Cosmo can see that.
Sure.
Shit.
We don't have a second airborne F-14, do
I was just about to ask that.
It's only the people who are in the appropriate level of air-to-air thread 2 that get an AIC. And further, I think they are potentially controlled by an additional access controller. So even if there were a free one, I don't think a random person who's qualified for the F-14 can jump into it.
I gotta change my stick out real quick. Fast, you could try hopping him back with stall since and Callan isn't here right now.
Aren't you already thread 2 though?
Yeah, I don't think he has an AIC F-14 though.
I'm showing
Well,
Nate.
Stal, I think in Callan's around, but I didn't know if he was planning on joining you. If you want me to jump back here, is that okay?
I mean, you can try, sure.
All right, I'm way north of the range. I'm coming in as fast as I can.
Is it letting you?
Gear up.
I had to jump out of the server for a second.
All right, we got 2 blue 4 guys in yet.
Nails, 7 o'clock.
I'm in.
Bandit, 335, 61 miles. Oh, I got some dirt at 10 o'clock. Roger.
All right, let's get you guys formed up. Then we'll set up this merge.
I'll see you up on tech.
I'm on deck.
Okay, I'm turning around. I was at the top of our cap. I assume you just spawned in.
Yep.
All right, cool. Looks like F&A dropped in.
It's in the back seat.
All right, I see you. I should be at your 11 o'clock low. I'll turn and join up.
Stal, you got me on intercom?
So you said you're joining me?
Yeah, I'll join up.
Okay.
All right. Whoop.
I'm coming back to flight level 180 and 0.8 on the speed.
Yeah, make the loop, make the left turn, and I'll catch up.
Okay. All right, let me know when you guys are all set.
What was the UHF frequency we wanted again?
It's already set. It's 249.8.
Okay.
All right, I'll slide up past you on the left. Bring your speed back to 0.8.
Two's visual. What are you calling yourself? Dozer again?
Nope, that call sign's cursed. We're it's funny actually. We picked Rage before Hawaiian did.
Okay, Rage 2's in.
Rage 1-2.
Rage 1-2's in. All right, you guys are...
Yep.
All right, your threat group is going to be probably 030 at this point. Probably about 50 miles.
Right. Rage hook left. Reference 360.
Rage 1-2, hook left.
All right, I guess that's him there. Check right 030.
Check right. Rage 1-2, contact.
Give me an STT if you can. If not, that's fine.
And 400 feet, looks like.
1. Can you get me an STT or no?
Range 20.
I'm hitting it, but no dice.
All right, no big deal. Looks like he's beaming.
Yeah, man.
Scan that radar to the right a little. Rage 1-2, do you have contact?
Negative.
Yeah, scan. Do you know how to use the azimuth to the right?
Yeah, is it not showing up?
I think we would have voted for flown them by now at this speed and closure.
Nope. Tally. 3 o'clock low. Range 1 defend west. Rage 1 in to the right. Eyeball. Sammy just flew underneath you.
Alright, one of you needs to go up above this engagement. Range 1-2, okay, I'm climbing up.
Nope, negative. You're a shooter.
Okay. 1-2 is staying shooter.
Range 1-1 I.
Hostile is at your 6 o'clock maneuvering.
Yeah, he is all over the place. He's rubber banding like crazy.
Yep, same. Yeah, it looks like he's still on your 6 o'clock.
Yeah, I can't tell. I lost him as he's pumping around all over the place.
He's, yeah, directly on your 6.
Okay, got him in sight.
Alright, break right. Still on your 6 o'clock. Sliding to your 7. So your 5 o'clock sliding to your 6. Keep turning to your right. Keep turning to your right. Still on your 6 o'clock. Pull right. All right, hard right, break right. All right, looks like he's either rubber banding or extending. Still on your 6, sliding to your 5. Continue right turn. Hostile is firing. No factor, but did release guns. About 0.2 nautical miles behind you. Guns, your 6 o'clock, close.
Yeah, Jane.
All right, extend and get out of there. He's looking for you.
Alright, let's knock it off and get back to emerge and swap roles.
Are you rubber banding like hell
Range
too?
1-2, knock off.
Yes.
Do you see tracers when I fire this gun?
Yeah.
I don't see shit.
Yeah, and you're rubber banding all over the place. Pretty bad.
Wonder. It's been happening a lot in the server. I'm not sure if it was just me.
My ping seems to be at like 50 when I look at it on the main screen.
But when
But
I
when I
hop in here, the
the
AI
AI
and
and other airplanes seem to
rubber band
rubber band a lot.
Yeah, we were getting the same. It was rubber banding.
Do you get it all the time, or only when OSU picks in the server?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I was practicing last night with Malamar, and he was like it was pretty much like every 3 or 4 minutes he would for about 10 seconds.
Yeah, but he was accessing from like Australia or something.
I was having the same issue with OSU the other day during the AIC. It was like consistently every 60 seconds or so.
Right. I'm wondering if it's OSU pick or I mean, because I haven't seen this when it was just Stahl and I doing all those AIC classes.
Yeah, that was the first time I've actually seen it since I've been in the academy.
All right, why don't you guys turn back in? I'm essentially in the same area. We'll just swap roles for this.
All right.
I can see confirm. I see your guns and I see tracers.
Right. Apparently, I don't see them, so that's kind of a problem for me.
I believe you even got a hit on Subic.
Really? Shit.
Yep.
I didn't see a hit on my side.
Just a couple of rounds at the before the last shot you took. Tech view is gonna say that. I'm not sure. But you're all over the place. We around every 40 to 50 seconds. You're gonna do like 3 seconds of going around. So don't go too low, or you risk to explode. I believe.
Yeah, if there is one problematic player, because it has to work on keeping everyone in sync. So if there's one problematic player, everyone's going to rub.
Now you know.
Yeah, I mean, it won't happen all the time. It's going to happen whenever the processing power isn't there or the network jitters.
We're switching spots, dude. You're lead.
Then you need to communicate that Hammer 1-2 has lead. Attack right, reference 060.
Yeah, be swinging that radar till you find him. He's roundabouts in the same spot, so.
Copy. I was just fixing radio binds. Desync is making me sick.
Yeah, tell me about it. One, you have contact?
1 negative. Hammer 1-2 negative.
Tally. 6 miles right.
Oh,
2 o'clock.
put that
low.
on tack. Put that on tack.
Tally. 6 o'clock low. Correction. 3 o'clock low. 6 miles.
Hammer flight tack right 90.
2. He's on our 3 o'clock low. See him in the mud? He's coming up.
Initial tally, Hammer 1-1 will be eyeball.
1-2 shooter. He's pulling around to my 6. All right, now you start watching where he is and help.
Copy. Yep, keep coming around.
Hammer 1-2, he's on your 6.
Negative. He's on my 12.
All right, he's beaming, coming across your nose. He's hot.
What's our speed?
$180. $190. $200.
Hammer 1-2, you look like you're on opposite sides of the turn. Hammer 1-2, look like you're pulling in behind him.
Watch your altitude.
My frame rate's shot. I can't hardly see.
Same. It's a lot of desync. Okay, he just crossed underneath us, left. 10 o'clock low.
All right, give me like sort of every 5 seconds updates on airspeed.
Copy.
And Sam, he's on our nose. Looks like he's pulling up.
He's inside.
550.
You got a good position on him.
$500.
Hammer 1-2, looks like he's trying to bug out. He may be coming back in on you.
200. $120. $220. $260. $240.
Hammer
Air 1-2. All right, you got him in good position.
Yeah, he's on our nose.
200. 180. $400.
Air 1-2, he's trying to extend away from you.
$340. 300. $350. $290. $300. 270. $210. 190.
Boy, the TAC radio's awfully
250.
Well, it makes it easy when he stays right on your tail the whole time.
Burn.
Ouch.
210.
All right, let's knock it up.
Hammer 1-2, knock it off.
Air 1-1, Air 1-1, knock it off.
All right, so that last evolution didn't necessarily give a lot of practice to the guy who was listening to the SA calls or the guy made, and there weren't a lot of directive calls either. So, the nice part is you'll get an opportunity with the 2 evolutions we have planned for today. Any questions about the 2 evolutions
Should I
we
not
just
have
had?
stayed on his 6?
I think you're good. He's just a little sore.
Yeah, actually, I do have one. So in that evolution, we actually, as 2, got tally on you first, and we're actually in a better position to kind of engage. In that type of situation, is there sort of a procedure? Lee did call TAC right, which I guess would have, if we had sort of straightened out and did that, it would have put him in a better position, but it would have been ultimately inefficient. So I guess, is there a good way to handle that?
You didn't necessarily get tally first. I was intentionally using the terrain to hide from, and you guys weren't aware. You were still focused on your radar instead of picking up with your eye.
No. Sorry,
Nah.
I meant like we got tally on you before Lead did because of where you were and where we were.
Oh yeah, I mean you know, you need to call out where that is, and then let Lee decide what he wants to do.
Yeah, that was my bad. I think I got a visual tally on you, and we jumped right in. I probably should have just made the call right then and there.
No, you called it on TAC. We just were kind of turning. Still, I wasn't like engaging at that point, so you did fine.
Gotcha.
Prematurely breaking up the flight, especially without the flight lead's awareness, is not a good idea. So you just need to promote the information to him and let him make the decision. Any other questions on that last engagement?
I definitely need to start using the NS instead of the dial speed gauge. Good lord.
Alright, so we got about 14 minutes before this AIC session kicks off. I'm going to get out of this plane and get with the OPFOR guys to do whatever kind of brief we're going to do before we kick this thing up.
Okay.
Recommend you guys respawn in your jets to make sure that you don't have any damage or any flares that you've discharged or whatever, so you're in fresh jet.
Is Ian Callan going to jump in?
He should be, yeah.
Soup, and it sounds like Ian Callan's going to be coming in pretty shortly. Do you want to go F-14, or are you going to stay in the Viper?
It's up to you, man. Whatever you want to do.